Every leader has heard that quiet whisper, you don't belong here. But here's the truth. The same voice that says you're not enough is often proof that you're standing right where you're supposed to be. Well, today we're talking about the journey from imposter syndrome to influential leader, how to silence self doubt and step fully into the impact you were made to have. Come on, let's talk about it. Welcome to Transformation Station. I'm your host, Adrienne Benton, and this is the space where we talk about growth and grit and the kinds of transformation that starts within. Today's episode is for every leader, creator, or difference maker who's ever questioned your own voice or you felt like you did not measure up. I want you to know right from the beginning, you're not alone. Imposter syndrome doesn't mean that you're incapable. It means that you care. Well, listen, today I am absolutely thrilled because we have an amazing guest who's very experienced and accomplished and has lots of wisdom. Let me tell you a little bit about Sharon. Sharon is an accomplished executive coach, public speaker, corporate trainer, and former IT executive with over 30 years of corporate experience. She holds an MBA from Adelphi University and a certificate in diversity and inclusion from Cornell University, and is an ICF certified coach specializing in empowering high performing women to lead confidently and purposely. Sharon, welcome to Transformation Station. It is wonderful to have you with us today.
It's lovely to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Wonderful. Well, listen, Sharon, as I was preparing for this episode, I was thinking to myself, I remember realizing that influence doesn't come from having it all together. I'm a leader who's been leading for over 2 decades, and there were multiple seasons in my leadership where I felt like I had to have all the answers, I had to do everything, and had to always be in control. And as I was preparing for this episode, I started thinking and saying, you know what? Who inspires me? Who inspires me? Who inspires me? And I realized, Sharon, that the leaders that inspire me the most aren't the ones who I saw master everything. They were the ones who I saw walking their leadership journey authentically. I don't know. Have you had an experience like that as you just kind of looked over your leadership?
Absolutely. I mean, I think you make such a wonderful point when you talk about authentic leadership, because for me, some of the leaders that really made an impression on me were the ones who were not afraid to show when they had made a mistake, when we had collectively failed as a team, but we needed to dust ourselves off and get on with the thing, as
Yes.
opposed to those leaders who just sort of had this, persona of perfection, which nobody in the team could ever live up to, because how can you live up to something that's not real, right?
Absolutely. So I want to start off by asking you this question. What was the most important mental or emotional shift that helped you move from self doubt to self assurance?
I think one of the most important shifts that I've ever made was to renegotiate my relationship with perfection.
Mm,
Because here's the thing, when you or any of us are trying to drive perfection all the time in every single dimension of our lives, it does not allow us the space to really focus on those things that are really important. And so sometimes good enough is just good enough, right?
I need you to say
Not
that again.
everything
Yeah.
has to be 100%, because you want to save your 100% for that thing that's really meaningful for you, that's going to have the impact either for your career or your personal life or whatever it is that you want to focus on.
I love that. I need you to say that again. You said good enough is.
Sometimes good enough.
Hey, I love that. That's right. Everybody who's listening and watching right now, I need you to go ahead and put in the comment section hashtag good enough. Sometimes good enough is good enough. I think that's a very pivotal mantra right there for all of us as leaders to embrace and hold on. And here's what I was thinking about as you were talking, right? Going from I am enough to I am evolving. For me personally, I had to move in my own mental and emotional shifts as a leader from am I enough, rather from am I enough to I am evolving, right? I'm evolving. That takes me right back to what you were talking about. Good enough is good enough. This is good. Who I am today as a leader, this is good. Can I improve? Can I grow? Absolutely. That's where the evolving comes in. But good enough is good enough. So I want to ask you this question. What are 3 signs? What are 3 warning signs that leaders have imposter syndrome?
I think one of the warning signs is that you are easily swayed by others. So you don't stand in your power in whatever it is that your domain expertise is. Whoever is whispering in your ear the loudest is the one that's shifting your direction. And the problem with that is when you are flip-flopping all the time, not only does your team recognize that, but the leaders who are leading you are also recognizing this at all, which means that you don't stand for anything, that there's no real strategy behind your actions. So I would say that is one that is absolutely essential. And one needs to recognize if you have this sort of leaning towards being swayed by people, you need to catch yourself and you need to do something about it. And sometimes that doing something about it can mean holding yourself to account, or sometimes you need an accountability partner to sort of like shine the light and say, do you realize you've done that again? And to self-correct in some way.
I love that. Okay. Easily swayed by others. What's another one?
The other one with imposter syndrome, which I think is really, it's a key one, is that you make an effort to keep yourself small, meaning that you believe that if you put your head down and you grind and you just work really hard behind the scenes, that everybody's going to understand the impact that you're making. And it's going to be known. And oftentimes we do that because we're just afraid to put ourselves out there. We don't want to create visibility about ourselves because we might have some doubts about it. But the point is that if we don't amplify our impact, how can we expect anybody to do that for us, right? So, it goes in a couple of different directions, but we have to lead it. We have to start it. We have to talk about what we're doing, how we're doing it, what impact it has on whatever the organizational imperatives are. And sometimes those little voices in our heads keep us operating in a very small type of way.
What impact do you see when people yield to the temptation of keeping or making themselves small, when leaders specifically?
Yeah. Well, what happens is you end up seeing that your colleagues are getting assigned to stretch assignments, that they're getting promoted, that people are moving up the food chain, and you are the reliable one because you're working hard. And guess what? When you're working hard and playing small, you're making life very comfortable for the others around you, right? Because they know she's there and she's always going to do this. And we can just dump more and more because you're an executor, right? You're not really leading, and you're not leading your career and leading your impact and leading and the amplification of who you are, right? And then you start to get frustrated because you see that moves are happening and you're not involved in any of those moves at all.
Mercy. So here in Transformation Station, we always like to pause and give our listeners and viewers an opportunity to do some assessment, to reflect on what we are talking about. And today, right now, Sharon is helping us to look at what are some very clear warning signs that leaders have imposter syndrome. Sharon talked to us about being easily swayed by others. She talked to us about making yourself or keeping yourself small. If you right now are journeying through one of these 2 warning signs, don't say ouch, just go ahead in the comment section and just say me. Listen, this is a community where we're transparent and we grow together, right? And so we want to invite you right now to ask yourself, are there any warning signs that I see evidence of that is showing me that as a leader that I'm struggling with imposter syndrome? Because we're going to continue talking with Sharon, who will help us to to get to how do we overcome in our daily life. One that I thought about, Sharon, as you were talking, was this one: overworking or overcompensating to prove worth. This is one right here that I've seen over and over and over and over and over again, right? Sometimes, and I'm going to be honest and transparent, I've had seasons where I have yielded to this. Sometimes it was because I felt a pressure that I was not good enough and that I had to overwork to show that I was competent just like everybody else, or that I could handle, or that I was worthy of the promotion. And I had to realize one day that this overworking, it's not really proving that I'm worthy. I'm already worthy. I'm there, right? I met the qualifications for the job, worthy. What have you seen when it comes to this one here? Overworking or overcompensating to prove worth?
Well, yeah, it's something that manifests itself in lots of different ways depending on where you are in the world. And as you know, I work in the United States and I work in Europe as well.
Yes.
In the United States, you see very often people pursuing multiple degrees.
Yes.
Degrees upon degrees upon degrees, overcompensating for the intelligence and the superpowers that they already have, and getting this additional validation in the form of a diploma or a certificate or whatever to show, I'm more qualified. But then going again and doing it over and over again, but the needle is not moving on the career. I'm not trying to suggest in any way that one should not better themselves and one should not pursue education. I think it's important. But pursuing education for the sake of pursuing it, where it's not elevating you in any way or advancing you towards wherever you want to be in your career, then you really have to reflect and ask yourself, why do I continue to do this? What is my driving force? And if you start to peel back a little bit, the onion, you start to understand it's about self-doubt in many cases. Not all cases, but in many cases.
In many cases. Wow. This is really good. So can you explain your Living While Leading framework? Talk to us about this framework.
Well, Living While Leading is a leadership practice that I am the founder and CEO of, where I do facilitation of workshops around all sorts of leadership topics. And I also spend a lot of time focusing on working with high performing women who want to perform that much more. And sometimes we're getting in their way, or sometimes the structures are getting in the way. And I have group coaching programs and one-on-one coaching programs where I work with them to overcome it. And one of the things that I like to talk about when I'm working with my clients is that, the whole notion of work-life balance is very challenging for me, because in the end, it's all your life, right? You use the word seasons, which I think is a really important word to use, because there are some times and some seasons of our career where we have to work really hard. We have to be switched on, working 60 hours, 80 hours a week, but that's not sustainable, right? And so if you continue to work like that over the course of years, what happens? You end up having burnout, you end up getting sick and having all of these other problems, right? And so I like to think more of like having a portfolio life, saying, yes, I have work, I have my family, I have whatever my religious traditions are, I have my community, my health, my dealing with my finances, so you think of it like a portfolio. You have all of these different aspects. And when you over rotate on one, all of the others fall out of balance, right? When you lose one, it's devastating because you haven't invested in the others, right? And so my mission is to try to get people to really examine the portfolio of their life and figure out how they can get a little bit more balance while still being ambitious, still doing the things that they need and want to do in their careers, but doing it in a much smarter and sustainable way.
I love that. Can you share with us, what is step one of your framework, Living While Leading?
One of the most important steps is to actually do an inventory of how you're spending your time over the course of weeks, So really, all the way down to the minor things. What are you spending time on? Not just at work, but at home. What are the things you're saying yes to all the time? What are the things that you've been saying yes to historically that worked for you and were meaningful to you years ago, but you're still saying yes to them because you've been saying yes, but they're not necessarily serving you well anymore? And once this inventory has been laid out, then we start to look at it and say, okay, what are the things you're spending 40% of your time here, 30% here? What are the most important things? You prioritize them, because I can't prioritize them for someone, but I can at least shine the light on where they're spending energy, where they have admitted to themselves, these things no longer serve me well.
Wow.
And that is a tough exercise. Believe me, that is not an easy thing to do, because most of us, by definition, want to please people. We want to make people happy, but oftentimes we do this at the expense of ourselves and our own ambitions.
Can you talk to us just a little bit about what that expense looks like, right? Because we're talking to a community of very high-driven leaders who've been going for about 10 to 25 years. They're not new to the game, but this still impacts. Why is it so important to stop and look at how you're investing your time?
Right. Well, here's the thing. Just because you've done something for decades doesn't mean that it has to continue to be done in that way. It's never too late to change something. And so oftentimes when you have this unbalance, it's manifesting itself in, and I've seen it with some executives that I've worked with, they don't even want to go home. They are almost volunteering to go on business trips, because when they get home, they're like a foreign person there. They don't know their families that well. The pandemic was very devastating for a lot of my clients, because all of a sudden they were sequestered in their home with people who they love dearly, who they're responsible for, but who they never really spent any quality time with. And this was really tough for a lot of them. So sometimes that's how it shows up. And, and if you have traditional roles at home where, one says, well, he's earning money and he's never home. Yeah, okay, but that's your family. And at some point that's going to come back and bite you in the butt. I mean, for some people. So I've seen it manifest itself like that in people who have been around the block for a while. The other way that it manifests itself is just a complete neglect of one's health.
Yes.
So the waistlines are getting thicker and thicker. Blood pressure is off the roof, but nobody is taking the right sorts of medications. There's absolutely no exercise. Eating is more about stress eating, or just, putting something in your mouth just to, dull the hunger pains, but not really being thoughtful about how you're eating. And you can do that for a while, but there's a moment when your metabolism changes, male or female, and your body is not going to be very forgiving of those kinds of behaviors. But in order to eat well, in order to exercise, that has to be done with intention, which means that you have to carve out time to make those choices for yourself. And again, if you have over-rotated in one portion of your life, it doesn't allow you the luxury to do that.
Mercy, you listen. I think right now people are like, ouch, 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 and ouch, because you're right. We end up taking care of the system, taking care of the mission, taking care of the team, and not taking care of ourselves. Have you heard or read the book, The Body Keeps the Score?
No, I haven't.
No, it's a phenomenal book, right? And one of the premises that I got from it, that the author says, is that, as we go through life, we have all of these situations and circumstances and occurrences, right? And we say, oh, okay, that happened. And we do what we need to do to just move past it. But our body says, wait a minute, I'm going to write this down. And it starts keeping score of all of the traumas, of all of the challenges, of all the things that we've encountered. And at some point, there comes a time where the body says the score is too high. And now all of a sudden we're seeing panic attacks, or like you said, the high blood pressure. Sharon, I have several friends who they work so hard for like 30, 40 years on their job, working hard to get to retirement. They retired and they ended up having a stroke, or they had a heart attack. And it's like their body said, oh, wait a minute, we get a chance to pause. Now let's catch up and deal with all the things that we did not deal with
Yeah.
previously.
It's heartbreaking, isn't it? Yeah.
Can you share from your experience with imposter syndrome? Can you share your experience with imposter syndrome and how you overcame it?
Well, I think, I share this story from time to time, not all the time, but from time to time. I come from very humble beginnings. I grew up in public housing in the Bronx, so the housing projects. I went to a underfunded school in an underfunded school district, all the way up through high school. So I excelled in my studies, but the bar was very low when you think about it. So by the time I got to university, um, I didn't realize that I had a substandard education. It was only when I got to university that I realized, gosh, these people know so much more than I did. And the imposter syndrome started to kick in. And I started university when I was 17 years old. And that was really tough. That was a really tough thing to be confronted with at that age. I couldn't discuss it with anyone because I was the first person in my family to go to university. So it was nothing that my parents could relate to in any sort of way. They were just happy I was there, and they just wanted me to power through. But they didn't. Nobody really understood the struggle. The struggle was real, and that was my first of many times. But I was quite young, and it's a tender age to deal with imposter syndrome and feeling less than and feeling othered. I got through it. I graduated on time. But, when a lot of people reflect on their university years and say it was the best time of their lives, that was not the best time of my life for me. It was a very challenging time for me.
I know that there are many leaders who are watching and listening right now that have their own. We each have our own time and season, if not even right now, where we have experienced imposter syndrome. And Sharon and I want to remind every leader that's listening and watching right now, you can overcome it. You can overcome it. And if you're listening and watching and you have overcome it, we want to invite you to share with someone else, another leader in your community who you know is struggling right now with imposter syndrome. Share with them. They can overcome it too. So as we talk about overcoming, right, Sharon, I'm going to ask you, in your experience coaching high-performing leaders, what are the top 3 mindsets that can dramatically accelerate professional growth and personal fulfillment?
One of the mindsets is to show yourself grace. So this is a behavior. You have to show yourself grace. And showing yourself grace is acknowledging your wins, acknowledging your superpowers, acknowledging your expertise. And most of us will be the first one to congratulate people when they do well. But we don't look at ourselves and understand that we've done things, we've done amazing things over our lifetimes, not just in the job that we have. And sometimes this is an exercise that I go through with my clients as well, is to say, let's talk about the struggle. What did you have to do to get here? And then when we start talking it through, I said, that's not what you went through. It's not what everybody else could go through. Do you understand what you had to do to get to where you are today? And oftentimes they just don't, right? The other thing is, on a weekly basis, we all are running around with these beautiful smartphones that have so much capabilities. I am telling my clients, or at least suggesting to them, to use whatever they like, either the voice memo or the note memo, to record their wins every single week, no matter how small they are. And then have a day, have a ritual where you sit down, I don't know, whenever you want to have some peace and quiet, on a Saturday, on a Sunday, whatever day, with your coffee or whatever, and look at your wins. Look at and acknowledge them. Because we are really cruel to ourselves, I would say, and we don't acknowledge the things that we're doing. And when we're constantly ignoring our wins, this is also weighing on our confidence, because we don't think we're getting anywhere, but we are getting anywhere, because all of these incremental steps, they add up. They add up something, right? With the relationships, with our journey to be more fit, with our journey to get the next level of achievement in your job, or to build your team to the next level, or whatever it is. baby steps, but they all add up to something big. So I would say that this is something that I really encourage people to do, because then when you start to understand the impact, because that's a word I love to use, when you start to understand the impact that you're making, it's impossible to beat yourself up all the time.
I love that. Leaders, you're listening, you're watching. We want to ask you, right? What is a shift that you use, an important shift that you use? Go ahead and put it in the chat, because when you share, it's going to encourage someone else. So Sharon, as we turn the corner here, this has been an amazing conversation, right? We want to empower our leaders who are listening and watching today, because I have no doubt that they're like, Sharon's on point. This is serious. I want to move from imposter to influential, right? What daily or weekly practices will help leaders build confidence and credibility?
Yeah. So I think it's important, some of the things we talked about before, keeping track of your wins, keeping track of the wins of your team, because let's face it, if you're a leader, you're not working in isolation. You have a whole bunch of people who are helping you get to your mission. And so it's important to also identify when they are doing strong, recognize them for their strength, call people out for their contributions, because then you create a culture within the team that you're leading where everybody is supporting everyone. And even in the hard times, even when it's tough, even when you've missed your number this quarter, it makes it that much easier to dust yourself off and try it again. Don't forget your team, one-on-ones with your team, whatever the cadence is different, depending on where people are physically located, and what kind of operation you're working in. But if you're leading, if you're not talking to your people on a regular basis, if you don't understand how they tick, your job becomes that much more difficult, right? And in the end, when they're doing well, you're doing well. Right?
Yes.
It's very clear, right? Because in the end, it's about you as the leader, right? So when they're thriving, you're thriving, right?
Yes.
When it's a harmonious culture, you have less BS to deal with on a daily basis, and so on and so forth.
1000%, 1000%. Something I thought about while you were talking was also schedule weekly reflection and feedback time. This is something that I've started to institute with my team right now, and I'm seeing it's exponentially paying some really big dividends, right? Because it takes it away from just do to do, and let's reflect. Let's talk about that. And I'm noticing that my team members in our reflection and feedback time, it's like they're finding their voice, right? They're lending to the shared response. It becomes a shared responsibility of the team to complete the mission, as opposed to just being told what to do and all the credit going to one person. Leaders who are listening and watching, we want to ask you, what daily habits and practices do you have in place? Share them in the comments. Let us know, right? So again, that we can continue to grow together. Sharon, this has been an amazing conversation. To be very honest with you, I feel like we just barely scratched the surface on this conversation. So we're definitely going to have to invite you to come back again. We need a part 2. In the meantime, I have no doubt that there are leaders in this community that want to reach out to you, tap into the resources that you have, maybe even get some coaching. How can people reach out to you?
Well, I have a website which is called livingwhileleading.com, and it has all of my coordinates in there. I'm very active on LinkedIn. So if you want to follow me or connect with me or DM me, I'm happy to know any of your listeners in that way. And I'm going to be running a workshop soon, which you can get through this link that you see here. It's a free workshop for 1 hour. And so if you click through to this link, you will get to the registration page and you can register for free. And then we'll see one another online.
Fantastic. All right. Transformation Station, you heard first of all, we like free, but also we like to grow. So we want to invite everybody right now. You see the link here on the screen. It's also in the description box. Please go ahead right away. Tap into the link, contact Sharon, get into the courses, see the resources that she has. And most importantly, let Sharon know that you saw, that you heard this episode. Let her know. And also let Sharon know what resonated with you as we talked about going from imposter syndrome to influential leadership. Let her know what resonated with you. And be sure to also ask her questions. She has a lot of experience in this area. Again, Sharon, it's been wonderful to have you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was my pleasure to be with you.
Absolutely. All right. Well, there you have it. Another amazing session. So here's your reflection for this week. I want you to think about one place in your life where imposter syndrome has tried to silence you and take one bold step forward. I'd love to hear from you. I want to invite you to share your breakthrough moment or one way you're choosing courage over comparison this week. Tag me and let's keep the conversation going. And if today's episode encouraged you, I want to invite you to follow Transformation Station, share it with someone who needs a reminder of their own greatness, and keep being the kind of leader who turns doubt into destiny. Until next time, keep leading with confidence, living with purpose, and transforming from the inside out.